First, you got your small knives. Blades maybe 2 to 2.5 inches long or so. Very good for most everyday carry tasks. Opening your mail, cutting zip ties, opening packages of new knives. But sometimes that's not enough. Maybe you want just a little bit more to grip onto. Maybe you just need that extra 0.5 or full 1 inch of blade. That's when you step up to what I consider a medium size knife. On this Ozark Trail, we got a full 3-inch blade on here. All 4 of my fingers can fit on this dude. So we got that little bit of extra cutting edge, but also a lot more to grip onto. We have a lot more control over the knife. It's going to be a little bit stronger. There's physically just more material here, more to work with, more to use. If the small knife wasn't enough for you, this should do the trick. But sometimes even this is not enough. Maybe you want something that you can absolutely trust in a stressful situation, a combative situation possibly. Enter the 4-inch blades. Now we have what I consider to be a large size folder. The grip extends past my fingers. I have a handful of different positions I can hold this in to extend my grip as much as I want. Even more edge to work with. This is surpassing most everyday carry tasks. Typically, most of us do not need this much cutting edge. But if you just want that extra capability, that extra potential, the 4-inch blades really can come in handy for that. But sometimes even that's not enough. What if you need to go the extra mile? Say hello to the extra large folders. We got a 5.5-inch blade right here. Many people would laugh at these things. Many people find these absolutely ridiculous. They think these are totally impractical. They think they're even gimmicks, jokes, whatever you want to call them. I absolutely disagree. These are not to be laughed at. They're very, very menacing blades. I would absolutely pick this over any 4-inch blade if I were going into a combative / defensive, martial, whatever you want to call it, emergency, stressful situation. Having that extra reach, something that can outreach most other people's fixed blades even, is something I absolutely would want to have. But sometimes apparently even that's not enough. Well, why don't we just cut all the crap and go straight to the extra large size knife. This is the largest folding knife I have ever owned. 7.5-inch blade on this bad boy. You can hold this with 2 full large size hands and still have room to spare. Now, I would pick this blade over even the extra large size knife right here. They're both Espadas, are large. They call this one the large size Espada, and this is what they call the extra large size Espada. But most of the knives Cold Steel makes, this is usually what they consider to be their XL size. This happens to be their one exception where this is the XL size. Regardless, I would always pick this one over this 5.5-inch blade in defensive situations. Obviously, I want as much reach as possible. Reach typically is what wins in most defensive situations. This is the absolute best defensive option you could pick as far as folding knives are concerned, I think. But this brings me to the point of the video. I think the XL size Espada, or I consider it to be an XXL size folding knife, is a rare example of too much of a good thing. So although I did just say, and I stand by what I said, that I would easily pick this knife over any other folding knife I can think of if it came to a defensive situation, I'd rather have this in my hand. I want all of this reach, a thrust attack, hacking and slashing. It's basically a machete at this point. I would so much rather pick this over anything, no matter how fast the deployment is on any other knife, no matter what the blade steel is. I just want this reach, and we have an AUS 10A blade steel on here and a triad lock. It's also waveable off of the pocket. There's plenty to grip onto right there to get it waved off. But the biggest issue with this thing, and a lot of people have brought this up before, but I'm just going to bring it up again, legalities. When it comes to getting into a defensive situation, even if you were lawfully defending yourself, someone was trying to attack you, trying to murder you, whatever the situation was, and you couldn't get out of there. You could not run away. You could not escape. For whatever reason, this person would not stop approaching. You had to pull this thing out to defend yourself, and they still would not stop approaching you, and you made an attack. And whether you killed them or not, you have attacked this attacker in a lawfully defensive situation, because you possibly would have died if you did not do so. And you go to court. You may get in trouble because your jury does not like the way this looks. It looks scary. You look like a nut job, a wacko crazy person, a lawful citizen defending yourself. Why would they carry this thing? That's what's going on in their minds anyway. Personally, I would not disagree with that. I would think, since I'm into knives myself and I'm into weapons, and I just think they're not only extremely useful, I find them very interesting and I like them as a hobby, of course, but very, very, very important tools I think we should all have for reasons I don't need to explain. If you're watching this, you probably know why as well. But that being said, most of us are not the quote-unquote average people. We're not the average members in a jury that are randomly selected. Most of those people would probably recoil in shock or disgust or whatever when they see this shown in the court case of you lawfully defending yourself. Now, they probably won't think you were defending yourself. Now, the defense case has been thrown off. Unless there's really good, clear footage of what happened and it really shows that you were the one not advancing on them, the attacker was advancing on you, and it was unprovoked, etc. Unless you have that evidence to go with this thing, I don't see this looking good for you in court. Just my opinion, and it's also a lot of people's opinions online. This is kind of over the line, too much of a good thing, too big. Aside from legalities, waving this off of your pocket, although it is doable and I have done it, and you can practice with it, because it's such a massive folding blade and it's so sharp. You make one little slip up, you snag this incorrectly, something gets lodged in the way there. It could slash into your leg, your hand could get in the way of there, that cutting edge could get your fingers, it could get really, really bad really quickly. If you're trained to practice with this thing, no issues. But if you just start picking up this thing and start waving it off your pocket willy-nilly without being careful, without proper training, I'd be very, very careful. It can be a danger to yourself as well because it's so huge. The bigger and bigger and heavier and longer you make a blade, the stronger you make the locking mechanism, the larger snap it has, the more it recoils, the quicker it deploys at these large sizes. It starts getting precarious. And I think this is right at the verge of being slightly dangerous to operate and maneuver. Of course, unless you are trained with it. You could say that for literally any weapon. You could say that for swords. You could say that for the flail. You could say that for a lot of different firearms. But the point I'm trying to make is to the average consumer, the average knife wielder, the average knife, weapon, gear, EDC carrier, something like this is a little bit unwieldy. It's just so cumbersome. It's so huge. And if you did successfully deploy this without hurting yourself or anyone else who did not intend to hurt, who did not deserve to get hurt, then once this is in your grip, ready to go, then I would pick this for a defensive blade. But all of those other criterias have to be met first, and that's the issue. So although, again, do love the knife and all, it's great. I love collecting it. It's one of my favorite knives ever, obviously. When do you see a knife this big? Not very often. When it comes to everyday use and simply just wanting a good knife I can deploy safely that would get the job done even in a very stressful, bad, dangerous situation, I'd honestly just go with the large Espada with the 5.5-inch blade, which is still absolutely ridiculous. It's absolutely massive for a folding knife. This is insane. It's huge. After holding this thing, I know a lot of you guys do this too. After holding the XL Espada, the large Espada feels like a compact little EDC folder. It's actually amazing. This feels so tiny now, but it's not to be laughed at. It's still a huge folder. I think the 5.5 to maybe even 6-inch blades are right in the sweet spot for self-defense options. If you're prioritizing defense and combat over everyday carry, 5 to 6 inches is our sweet spot. This guy's 5.5 inches, so it's the sweet spot within the sweet spots, I think, is that length for a blade. This, if we were in like a zombie apocalypse or economic crash where there's just nothing but enemies and it's just dog eat dog, everybody's fending for themselves, I'd pick this, sure. But in basically any other situation, even if I'm in a very sketchy, dangerous part of town, whatever, I just pick this one. Now, let's say if it's in the middle of the night, somebody broke into my house, and for whatever reason, I'm not using a firearm. Maybe I can't own a firearm, depending on where I live, but I can get this. Somehow, if that were the case, I'd pick this one as a home defense knife. But then again, if I had a home defense knife, I think I'd just go with a fixed blade anyway. I wouldn't pick a folder. I just pick something that already has an edge this long, if not longer, and just a smaller handle that I can just hold on to and not have to worry about it folding or anything like that. So the whole point of this is so it's a giant blade that you can carry on your person when you're out and about. That's the point of a folding knife. It's supposed to be compact and easier to carry than a fixed blade. Size is the whole point. It's just kind of contradictory because it's so massive, which kind of makes it, I don't want to call it a joke knife. It's certainly, this is no joke. 7.5-inch cutting edge right there. Are you kidding me? This is the first knife I would use out of any folding knife in my collection if it had to be a folding knife and it were specifically for a defensive situation and I knew it were going to come up. But that being said, there's a lot of novelty here. It's totally usable, but everyday use, if you're not specifically trained with this thing, I kind of steer clear with it, not only because it can be a danger to you or someone else who, again, does not deserve to get hit by it, but legalities. Let's say you do successfully defend yourself. You won the attack. The person who's trying to attack you, you defended yourself, and you got out of there safely because you had this knife versus that knife. And then you wound up going to court, you could still be the one who gets in trouble. I think that's absolutely ridiculous. I think that's stupid as hell. Person defending themselves lawfully should not be punished for how they defended themselves lawfully. That's absolute bullshit. But that it can happen. I'm not in charge of our legalities. I know that's just how we currently are in society, even in the US. Now, some people don't even care. Some people go, well, I'd rather rot in jail and live than be innocent and dead. That's up to you. I'm not going to make that decision for you. But although I really like this knife, there's a lot of novelty here, and it absolutely is devastatingly long. It's nothing to be laughed at because of the fact that it's just very cumbersome and precarious. Unless you're trained with this thing, I think there's better options for defense, despite this being so huge. Too much of a good thing, I think, is why we don't see as many 7.5-inch bladed folders. But hey, there's still a special place for this style knife in my heart, and there always will be. What do you think? Would you carry something like this? Would you choose this over the 5.5-inch blade? Would you think this is too much? Would you rather pick something with a 4-inch blade for a defensive situation? Let us know in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Feel free to subscribe, hit that little bell notification if you do not want to miss weekly knife and gun videos, and feel free to support me on Patreon. Link in the description. Thank you so much for watching. Mannix out.